Her heels echoed across the polished restaurant floor like small tremors of disappointment. The empty chair across from her looked louder than any crowd. The waiter had already asked twice if she wanted to order without her guest, and the pity in his eyes stung more than the silence. Rain tapped the windows of a quiet Boston street, and somewhere inside her chest something fragile cracked. Her blind date never showed, not a text, not a call, not even an apology, just a cold absence in a world already heavy with loneliness. She stared at the two untouched glasses of sparkling water, fighting the weight in her heart, when two boys in red jackets stopped near her table and whispered the words that changed everything. "Dad picked you, not anyone else. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and moments that don't happen by accident, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more emotional stories like this to life." Hours earlier that day had held hope. Her name was Sarah, a 32-year-old nurse who spent more time caring for strangers than caring for herself. She had agreed to the blind date only because her best friend insisted that she deserved love, even if love had never stayed long enough in her life to become real. The restaurant was warm, filled with soft jazz and quiet conversations, yet she felt like the only person alone in the world. Every minute felt longer, like the universe was holding a mirror to her deepest fear. Maybe she wasn't someone worth choosing. She waited almost an hour before she accepted that no one was coming. On her way out, she grabbed her coat, eyes blurry from trying too hard not to cry. That's when she noticed them, two boys, maybe 8 and 10 years old, wearing bright red jackets that stood out like a spark in the night. They stared at her like they recognized something in her, like her sadness looked familiar. They followed her out into the rain, running to catch up, breathless and determined. One of them, the older boy with sandy hair and freckles, said that their dad told them to find her. The younger boy nodded fiercely, as if the truth depended on his seriousness. Their clothes were soaked, but their eyes were bright. They told her they had been waiting outside for someone who looked like her, a woman with tired eyes but a kind smile. She didn't understand what they meant. She didn't know their father. She wasn't anyone special. Cold rain slipped down her coat, and the city lights blurred around her. The boys spoke fast, explaining that their father had seen her earlier while passing the restaurant, and said she reminded him of someone who once saved him, in a way that wasn't medical but emotional. They said he told them, "If she walks out sad, tell her dad picked her, not anyone else." Confused, overwhelmed, and shivering, she followed the boys across the street into a small community center where a group of volunteers were packing boxes for a food drive. The warm air smelled like cardboard, soup, and something homelike. In the center of the room stood a tall man with a worn jacket and gentle eyes. His name was Mark, a single father who worked as a carpenter and spent his free time volunteering with his sons. He noticed her immediately, like her presence completed a picture he was waiting to finish. He smiled with the kind of honesty that people don't fake. He told her that earlier, when he'd passed the restaurant window, she looked like a person trying not to fall apart in public. Something about that image reminded him of the day his late wife told him to choose kindness every time life hurt too much. He didn't know why, but he felt that maybe she needed someone to tell her she was chosen, even if life had made her feel rejected. Sarah listened with disbelief, but something about his quiet conviction felt real. She stayed at the community center longer than she planned, helping Mark and the boys pack boxes of canned food and winter blankets. The boys worked with a joyful seriousness, teasing each other and calling Sarah their assistant with childish pride. Laughter softened the night, and her heart, so heavy just an hour earlier, felt strangely light. The world suddenly didn't seem so cruel. She had spent years healing others, yet no one had ever taken the time to see the cracks in her. But here she was, seen by strangers who owed her nothing. Over the next weeks, their paths kept crossing. Sometimes she volunteered with them. Sometimes Mark brought the boys to the hospital fundraiser where she worked. Slowly, life began to shift. The woman who had once been left waiting at a table now had two boys running to hug her every time she walked into the room. Mark told her stories about his wife, about grief, about rebuilding a heart from splinters and sawdust. She told him about long nights in the hospital, about her loneliness, and about the blind date that never came. They weren't two perfect people finding each other. They were two wounded souls choosing to stand beside each other without pretending the wounds weren't there. One winter afternoon, snow fell across the neighborhood as they handed out warm meals. The boys wore the same red jackets, now patched at the elbows, laughing as they passed out bags of bread and hot chocolate. Mark watched them with a soft smile that held both joy and remembrance, like the past and present shook hands in his voice. Sarah looked at him and realized something she had never expected, that sometimes the love you deserve finds you while you're busy waiting for the love you think you want. Her blind date never showed, but fate had shown up in 2 small jackets and a quiet man with a gentle heart. There were still hard days, nights when grief sat heavy on Mark's shoulders, days when exhaustion pressed on Sarah like a weight. But they didn't walk those days alone anymore. Just when she thought she would fall apart again, the boys would storm into her life with chaotic laughter. And just when Mark feared he'd never love again without guilt, Sarah's steady presence reminded him that love wasn't replacing someone. It was honoring them by continuing to care. Months later, they stood once more outside the same restaurant where the story began. This time, the table wasn't empty. 2 glasses sparkled between them, and the boys pressed their faces against the window, waving dramatically until the waiter laughed. Sarah remembered the woman she was that night, broken, abandoned, certain she wasn't chosen by anyone. Now she understood that love isn't always the person who shows up on time. Sometimes it's the people who arrive by miracle, not by plan. If this story touched your heart or made you believe that second chances can come from unexpected places, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us continue bringing stories of hope and kindness to the world. Special request, please comment what part of the story moved you the most. And so, her journey didn't end with rejection. It began there. The woman left waiting learned that sometimes being stood up is just life clearing the table for something real. And as snow settled softly on the Boston streets, Sarah raised her glass to the love she never expected, grateful for 2 boys in red jackets who refused to let her walk away unloved.